We're back with another episode of the Nebraska Football Show. I'm joined with Steve Marik, as always, from Inside Nebraska. Steve, how we doing? How we feeling?
I'm doing great. I think a lot of people around these parts are doing great because of Nebraska's 28-10 win over the hated rival Colorado Buffaloes and Deion Sanders, Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter, all that good stuff. So I think the vibes are pretty good right now everywhere you look in Lincoln.
Yeah, and coming out of that game, going into that, you and me had talked off camera a bit. Like there was this possibility that Nebraska could run away with it, and we kind of saw that on Saturday. But coming out of these 2 weeks, you look at, the first team Nebraska played, UTEP. They went out in week 2 and lost to Southern Utah, an FCS team. And then you see the Colorado team Nebraska played. You saw what happened when they went up against each other. You go back and watch that film, and you're like, okay, well, the trenches are as suspect as we expected.
Yeah.
Defensively, there were the same questions we had going into the game remain after the game. I was a little surprised to see Nebraska ranked after those two games. And of course, for the first time since 2019, first time the program's 2-0 since 2016. I understand there's a lot of excitement and hype. But at the same time, I wonder a little bit if we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with this Nebraska team and what they've done so far this season.
Yeah, being ranked, and I guess it's not a shocker the way I look at it because just of the gravity of everything surrounding this game, all the talk, all the publicity, all the cameras, all the talking heads talking about this specific game. So, I think when Nebraska wins it, of course they're probably going to be ranked. And they're number 23, right? 24 in the AP poll. So, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, you're right, Tim. Like, I don't think UTEP's going to be very good this year. They have a lot going on with the new staff and everything, very, very new roster. And I don't think Colorado's going to be very good. You can't win football games playing line of scrimmage football like Colorado does. I just don't think that that's going to go well for them this season. They're not taking the line of scrimmage seriously, and I think they're kind of learning a hard lesson right now. So, yeah, did Nebraska beat two potentially bad teams? I think so. But on the other hand, I'm looking at this as like for the first time in a very long time, Nebraska finally has early season momentum under it. And once you start feeling good about yourself, you start playing better. You start playing harder. You start learning things about yourself that you can take into other future games. And I think that's exactly what's happening with the Huskers right now. Where did they beat two good teams? No, I think they beat two bad teams. But the momentum generated off those two games and how it looked to the fan base on the outside and how it's energizing everybody, who cares? I mean, they're going into this, they're going to beat Northern Iowa, and then they have a really huge, absolutely massive Big Ten opener on a Friday night inside Memorial Stadium after that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you, Tim. I think we're some people are getting a little ahead of themselves with everything, but at the end of the day, who cares? I mean, there's a lot of positivity going around right now, and there hasn't been a lot of that at Nebraska in recent seasons. So this is going to be really interesting to follow and see how far Nebraska can take this thing.
For sure. And I don't really want to take away either from what Nebraska's done, just in the sense
Yeah, I don't
that
either.
I think it
Yeah,
is
me neither.
it is baby steps, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
this team had to learn how to win again. They didn't do that
Yeah,
they didn't do that a whole lot last year. Rule talked about that a lot last year of just like we need to get these guys to a point where they know how to win, they can beat because again, for the last couple of years, they haven't started 2-0 because they haven't beat the teams they should beat.
exactly.
Now they're getting back to that point where it's like, okay, we're beating the teams. Nebraska's beating the teams we should beat. And I also do believe a little bit like a lot of this discussion in terms of like, okay, Nebraska's getting a little or people are getting a little ahead of themselves with Nebraska. Like we've seen, some people project them to be like first teams out of the playoffs or potentially even make the playoffs, which again, I think that's a little crazy, but just in general, I don't think that discussion or any of the outside noise is getting to the locker room. I do believe that culture right now is so
Yep.
intact that their
Hmm.
focus is just going 1-0 every week from the top down, from Rule down to Raiola, down to the coaching staff, down to the rest of the program. It's this emphasis on being 1-0 each week, uh, improving week over week, and we've seen that already. Just week to week improvement over the first 2 weeks in specific aspects of the game. Um, but getting back, I think to that Colorado game, obviously the first half incredibly dominant. There's so much we could talk about from that first half of
Yeah.
wow, like look at the Nebraska's pass rush. We kind of talk going to unit. This has a chance to be Nebraska's best unit is their defensive front, and they just proved. I had people that like followed this team kind of casually, texting me after the game, being like, "Whoa, I didn't realize Nebraska was so deep on the defensive line," or "I didn't realize Nebraska was And you got contributions from Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, the two stars. You got Jamari Butler off the edge. You got James Williams off the edge. Makai
MJ
Bear,
Sherman, MJ
MJ
Sherman getting
Sherman,
in on the fun. Yeah.
Prince Will, like Prince Will's coming into his own as like a flash, like third and long or situational pass rusher where
Hmm.
he's kind of flying off the edge. And then even late, you got Willis McGahee and Keona Davis getting to the
Yeah.
quarterback. Nebraska's got some depth now on the D line. I think that's a early takeaway or lasting takeaway for me coming out of that Colorado game. Just the ability to tee off the way they did. And again, Colorado's line is suspect, of course, especially on the interior. But I do think seeing what Nebraska, specifically like James Williams and Prince Will were able to do off the edge, going up against a really good tackle in Jordan Seaton. I think that's just impressive. Okay, here's James Williams, a former walk-on in year two. Like he struggled to hold on to weight, but he's finally getting to that point. And here he is just teeing off on the first third down of the game against
Hmm.
a heralded five-star offensive tackle. That's playing in a big moment for sure, but was heralded coming out as a guy that's ready made to play, that did win that starting job and has played solid football through the first two games of his career. But James Williams got him a couple of times on Saturday.
Yeah, and James Williams was a big part of Nebraska's defense, obviously, and that whole third down, kind of third and long speed rush package that Tony White put out there on that very first 3rd and 10. It was the one where Ty Robinson recorded his sack. If you look at the personnel on the field, so it's basically like a 5-1-6. So you have five down linemen in James Williams, Jamari Butler, Ty Robinson, and then Princewell Uman Mielen was a lone jack out there. But then you also had John Bullock as the lone inside linebacker. There was only one linebacker on the field for this specific 3rd and 10 that I'm talking about. And Tony White went back to this specific package throughout the game. And then the six DBs behind them, Tommy Hill, Malcolm Hartzog, Marcus Buford Jr., Deshaun Singleton, Isaac Gifford, and then the sixth DB, Tim, Sierra Wright, the transfer from USC. So Tony White has a lot of tools to use on this defense, and the way he's putting them together and finding guys for specific roles for each down and distance. I mean, like you said, there's a whole lot of stuff to work with right here, and it is a deep defense. It's a deep old defense for sure, and it was kind of cool to see Sierra right out there, and then to see him make a tackle as a punt gunner later on in the game was very cool as well. So yeah, I mean, Colorado didn't have an answer for Nebraska's pass rush, so it's something that makes you think how good this defense is going to be against Big Ten offenses. Now, sometimes these Big Ten offenses aren't going to be lighting up the scoreboard, but it's just a different brand of football once you get into conference play. So it's Nebraska was one of the best defenses last year. Can they replicate what they showed last year this year? I definitely think they can. But yeah, I mean, going back, we can talk about it more, but that defense, those third and long packages was really fun to watch because a lot of guys started hunting and eating. It was very cool.
For sure. Yeah, there's some things with Nebraska. It's like you can't really read into the results from the first 2 weeks, but again, that Colorado, those pass catchers specifically, Nebraska's not going to face pass catchers like that until
No.
USC and until Ohio
Hmm.
State. They're not going to see a room that's as deep as Colorado's is and as talented as Colorado's is until then. So you've got a couple of weeks here where, okay, we can get back to, because the big question going into this game, and a question that will be brought up again when we get into USC and when we get into Ohio State week is going to be, can Nebraska get home with 4 or 5 pass rushers rather than, having to send a blitz? And they showed the ability to do that
Yeah,
on
they did.
Saturday. And again, they're
Hmm.
not going to face a line on the flip side of that. They're not going
Yeah,
to face
it's
an
gonna be
offensive
better.
line and a protection that's that bad.
Hmm.
Probably again this season. And so, but you trust, the unit that you have. Like Nebraska was living in the backfield
Yep.
last Saturday. They don't need to do that to have success. They just need to hold to play within the structure of the defense. Hold on, and again, like they don't need to really get exotic either right now because they've got guys in the back end that they trust. They have guys in the front that they trust. A big question for me about the defense really coming into the year was just how well can these linebackers hold up? And so far, maybe the most improved unit on the team has been the linebackers, just in terms of, or specifically most improved players have been John Bullock and Mekhi Bear. Like, just if you're talking about starters,
Yeah.
year to year improvement. Like, again, you could talk about some guys on the offensive line, maybe, but those two guys, just the way they played with their hair on fire through 2 games, it's been really impressive, and it's quickly answered whatever questions I had about the linebacker room.
Yeah, I mean, those two guys' stories are is crazy. I mean, Matt Rule and Tony White and Rob Dvorak show up, and all of a sudden he like just make they that group just coaches up those two guys who weren't really factors earlier in their careers. I mean, John Bullock, he's a 6 year guy right now, but before last year, he was hardly playing. He was just a walk on doing some special team stuff. And then Mekhi Bear, his first 2 years in the program, didn't play a snap. All of a sudden, Rule, White, and Dvorak show up, and now they're like looking like all Big Ten caliber linebackers. They're flying around, they're fast, they're violent. It's really fun to watch. And yeah, that linebacker room might be getting Javen Wright to return as well. Who knows? But things are looking positive on that front. So that's another starting caliber inside linebacker too. Steph Thompson, the transfer from Syracuse, who has played for Tony White and knows his system. He's starting to get more reps. Vincent Shavers, we all know about him. He's a freshman who can play. Does he know what he's doing all the time? No, but he plays fast and physical. And when you do that, coaches love to play guys like that. So this inside linebacker room at one time, at one point, maybe like early in the season, everybody was like meh on, but right now it's looking good in my opinion. I mean, they've got guys who can rush the passer. They've got guys who are good inside the box in run support. Some of them are really good in pass coverage. I mean, look at John Bullock in that pick six that Tommy Hill had. John Bullock is the guy who made that play. I mean, he was the overhang defender, and he takes away that slant route that Travis Hunter was going to be running. Shedeur Sanders wants to throw the slant route. He sees John Bullock there. He hesitates for a split second and then goes to his outside throw, that little hitch. That's when Tommy Hill was right there waiting for it. I mean, yeah, this inside linebacker room at one point I wasn't so high on, but right now I'm like, dang, these guys can play. I mean, I think it's because of good coaching and good scheming and everything. I mean, these guys can play.
For sure. And I'm excited to see more from them, like, down the line against Big Ten play, how they hold up against, a more potent rushing attack, which we'll start to see here in the next coming weeks as we
Yep.
get into Northern Iowa and then get into Big Ten play. Getting back to the Colorado game, I guess flipping to the offensive side of the ball, I guess. Uh, Lasting thoughts just on that second half and how I guess relatively underwhelming it was for Nebraska's offense and just their ability to not necessarily close out that game. I think context is important. Like my immediate post game thought was, oh, that was weird. Like that second half was really weird, and I felt like Nebraska, probably left some points on the table, and I still think they did that. But talking with some people that were on the field and just getting a vibe from those that were like were down on the field and were seeing or seeing Colorado sideline and what they were act like on the field and the talk. Listen to Matt Rule talk after the game. I think the general consensus was that the team had felt that Colorado wasn't going to fight to get back into that game after halftime. They felt like they had made them quit. You had recruits talking about that. Christian Jones after the game, his big quote was they made him tap out, which is pretty much
Yeah.
what Nebraska did. And
Hmm.
so it gives you a little context, and maybe like in retrospect, it's like, okay, maybe that second half wasn't as bad as I thought. Like maybe they were just, maybe Marcus Satterfield did, take his foot off the gas a little bit. Maybe, like again, they execute and don't have some penalties on some long chunk plays. Maybe they do get another touchdown or two regardless. But I guess coming out of the second half, are there any lasting concerns with you from what the offense and the special teams did?
So no, not really. I don't think any of the offensive woes in the second half is going to be kind of like a lingering thing into the rest of the season. I don't really believe that. But just going through some of these numbers here, might as well do it. So in the first half, 213 total yards for Nebraska. In the second half, 121. In the first half, they were averaging 6.3 yards per play, pretty good. And then in the second half, Colorado actually out yarded them per play, 4.9 to 3.9. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a very good second half, and obviously the penalty situation took back some like multiple explosive plays, especially from Ja'Cory Barney. I'm writing something right now that I think a lot of people are going to like on Ja'Cory Barney's day and how the staff has kind of tried to insert him into the offense through his first two games of college football. But yeah, nine second half penalties for Nebraska really kind of ruined a lot of stuff. But no, I don't think a lot of them are going to be lingering. Just because I know, I know what I think that Marcus Satterfield knows what he can do with this offense, especially with Dylan Raiola. And you're right. I mean, looking at Colorado on the sidelines in the second half, they just looked like they didn't want to be there anymore. The body language was absolutely awful. I mean, if you're a head coach, I don't know, like that wasn't a very very good showing from Colorado's program, just the way it looked on the sideline when they were in the second half. I mean, even Matt Rule after the game, he said that he knew that the game wasn't probably going to be competitive in the second half, and so that just tells me that the coaches saw the same thing that everybody else saw, that hey, Colorado was just going to ride out this second half and go home. So I think that kind of played into it and everything. And no, the special teams too. I mean, Brian Buschini had a really good day, I thought, with
He's
his
had a good start to
punts.
the year. He's
Yeah,
had a
he
really good
has.
start to the year.
And he was one of the guys that a lot of people were kind of wondering about coming in. The thing on him is always like, can he? We know that he can be a good punter. We know that he has excellent hang time when he needs it, but can he do it consistently? He hasn't done it consistently to this point. But this year, I mean, I think he has. But then you have a failed protection on one of his punts, and then it gets blocked in the second half. You give up a long kickoff return, a 61 yarder, I think, to Jimmy Horn that John Hull, your kickoff specialist, has to run down and push out of bounds, which, by the way, is a really good play by Johnny Hull. So shout out to Johnny Hull. But um, yeah, I don't know. They're still doing some really good things. They blocked Ty Robinson, got a hand on a field goal attempt again, which is something that, Tim, you and I thought could be possible after watching that North Dakota State Colorado game where those Alejandro Mata, I think is the field goal kicker's name, is his lone kick field goal attempt against NDSU came out super low. So we thought that there would be a chance that Nebraska could do something there, and they did. So that was good to see. So there's still some really good things happening, but then there's some like lapses too with like that long kickoff return, them getting a punt block. So um, look, it's the second game of the season. Everybody's kind of figuring things out right now. Things are going to get better with the more games that guys are playing. So, no, I'm not. I mean, Tim, do you think that any of this is kind of serious stuff right now
I
will be
my
lingering on?
Yeah, I mean my real only concern, serious concern is the kicking game right now. Just
Oh, I forgot about Alvano. Yeah,
inconsistencies and I mean the coaching staff has said at this point there he's making kicks in practice, but it's not translating to the game. Like he had a gimme on Saturday against Colorado that he missed.
32 yards.
And it's getting to that point where it's like, okay, like we might need to see Johnny Hole out there or
Yep.
try something new. And I don't know, maybe we get that question answered against Northern Iowa, or maybe he gets some reps in a live game, but it's starting to become an issue because it's like this is a guy that was recruited for the fact that he hit five of those in Memorial Stadium, and
And from
now
really impressive distances.
yeah, in conditions, in weather conditions, in winter weather
Yeah, it was
conditions.
in brutal cold in late November in Nebraska. Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that it's like, okay, we're in year two now, and it's like, okay, he's missing gimme kicks. Like, is it a mental thing? But it's just starting to be something that like, I'm a little wary of because, you get into Big Ten play. These are tighter games. Every score counts there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't lay points on the field. And Nebraska would just like to have, sustainable kicking because I think in almost every other element, they've got a solid punter that they trust right now. And I think that that room's going to be good for a while, even once Bushini leaves. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is giving you
Oh,
consistency as
man.
a punt returner.
He
You know,
needs
I
he needs more shout outs. Like he's
oh,
catching the
absolutely.
punts. He is
Yeah.
returning them for positive yardage, which is like two things that hasn't happened at Nebraska in recent seasons consistently. I mean, I feel safe with IGC back there, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, and again,
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of the day, it is a college. It is a college punt returner. At some point this year, just because of the way he does haul them in, I'm sure there's going to be a mishap or something along the way because he can be a little late to just tracking it and then like running under it. But he does a
Yeah.
good job of securing it and making sure it's like, okay, this is my ball. I'm not going to fumble it. There's no
Mm-hmm.
bobbles really. You haven't seen that from him. He does a
No.
good job of securing it and then immediately getting upfield, like you said. Like doesn't
He can
doesn't
he can do like everybody wants Ja'Cory Barney back there, and I get it. Look,
and he'll
Ja'Cory
be there
Barney is
eventually.
he'll
I
be
believe
there
he'll be there.
eventually. He's lightning in a bottle. I understand, but right now at this point, you want an old veteran guy who has been there, done that, and it makes good decisions back there of when to let the ball roll, when to not let the ball roll. And Isaiah Garcia Castaneda still has some one cut and go, and he can pick up an extra 5, 6, 7 yards, something like that. I know everybody wants the 20-yard game from Ja'Cory Barney, but it's coming in the future. But right now, I think IGC is a perfect guy back there.
Yep. And just in general, I think as a fan base, Nebraska fans just need to like baby steps. Like the program needs to be taking baby steps here. Like I understand, like everyone remembers what it was like to win 8, 9 games per year, like pretty consistently, and they think Nebraska isn't far off from that, and I don't think they are either. But at the same time, like again, like it just across the board in terms of their ranking, in terms of all of this, is like no, let them learn how to win first. Like let them win some Big Ten games first. Let them prove it against even competition on the field before they get ranked.
The
Let's
Illinois game is going to be important, really
right,
important. I
right,
don't think
and
Luke
like
Altmaier is that bad.
oh, not at all. That's
No,
competent
I think it's
quarterback
his
play.
second
Yeah,
second year in the program. I think Luke Altmaier could be a guy that
right.
does some stuff against
Right, and
Nebraska's
early
defense.
on this year too, you've got Purdue and Indiana that have looked better on the field than we expected going into the year. You've got Rutgers coming in after that, and that's not going to be an easy game. So you've got some stuff on the schedule, but it's like okay, learn how to win these games first before we talk about ranking. At this point, it's over. They're ranked, and it is what it is. But
And maybe Tim, the getting over the hump of learning how to win is eliminating that second half against Colorado and making it more smooth and not having that second half against Colorado
yep,
happen again. Maybe that's the next
that's
step
the next
of
step.
this
That's the next
program.
step. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then like when it comes to punts too, it's just like okay, yeah, like yeah, people want a guy that can house punts. They haven't had that in a
Yes.
while. Let's just get a
Mhm.
guy that can at least secure the punt and make
Yes.
sure Nebraska does get the possession back when they earn possession back because that hasn't happened in the past.
hmm
Nebraska defense does a good job of securing guys and locking it down, forcing a three and out, and then whoever's back there is fumbling it and giving the ball back to the opponent in plus territory. So let's just appreciate the fact that Nebraska, for now, seems to have a competent punt returner back there that is at least creating positive yards and is securing punts. I think again, baby steps in a lot of different elements, like even Dylan Raiola. And I know some people is like, okay, a very efficient performance, not the biggest day through the air for him, but that's all Nebraska needed on Saturday was competent quarterback play, efficient quarterback play. They haven't had that in a while. Nebraska has finished in plus in the turnover categories for the
Yeah.
second game in a row, something they
hmm
didn't do at all last year. And so that again, baby steps. Like just trust that this thing just step by step is going to take some time.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that Dylan Raiola hasn't thrown an interception yet. He's really taking good care of the ball. Now there were some risky throws against
Oh
Colorado in
yeah.
there. Shout out Ramir Johnson for hauling that in because that looked yikes there for a second. But yeah, I mean, Matt Rule is extremely high on Dylan Raiola's performance during his Monday press conference. So the head coach really likes what he's seeing from the young quarterback.
For sure. And it's not hard to see why. Again, there's just so much to glean and like little things. Like I was talking to some friends on the scouting side of things over the weekend and just like talking about it's like, okay, hey, we finally saw some freshman moments from Dylan, but also like it's still the little things, the way he's manipulating the pocket. You saw the tale of two quarterbacks, one that can move around in the pocket and what
hmm
that means for an offense. Like Shador himself said it after the game, like, hey, how many times was Dylan sacked? And it's like, Shador, listen, that wasn't all on the It wasn't all because of offensive line. It's also because Dillon does a good job of moving around the pocket and
Yeah.
evading pressure. And there were times where Shador, there's a guy right in his face, and he
Doesn't
takes us.
move.
He doesn't move. He just takes the
Yeah.
hit, and
Hmm.
and so that's the difference. Is you've got a guy now in Nebraska who can move around in the pocket, can create on the run, can extend plays. Showed off the wheels a little bit on Saturday, which we hadn't seen yet.
And and what I really liked about that 3rd and 10 scramble that he had for 12 yards, he took a lick from the number 7, the safety. But he got up, he popped up right away, motioned first down. When athletes do that, they understand that, like, hey, I just got lit up in front of like thousands of people watching, but I'm going to get up and say, I don't care. I'm tough. First down. What's next? That's
Yeah.
exactly what I saw with Dylan Raiola. That was
Yeah,
good to see.
the toughness was on display on Saturday.
Yep.
He took some hits. He
Yep.
threw some blocks. You saw that. He throwing a
Yeah.
block with his off shoulder, which is again very mindful of being of the situation. Um, and yeah, we've talked plenty, I think, about Colorado. I think real quick we want to dive into just what we're looking for in Northern Iowa. Kind of expecting Nebraska to win. There could be a bit of a hangover moment. Especially early. I think that Nebraska could get off to a slow start. It's going to be another 6:30 kick, but crowd's not going to be as raucous, so you kind of have to bring your own energy because of who the opponent is. But expecting Nebraska kind of handle business on Saturday. But what are we looking for? I'm expecting them to clear the benches a little bit like they did against UTEP.
Yeah.
Expecting like some young guys to get some playing time, to get some opportunities. I guess what are you looking for on Saturday, Steve?
Just a clean football game. No, stay positive in the turnover margin. But hold on to the ball. Don't throw interceptions. Just be a clean game. Limit the penalties again. Don't have 9 second half penalties again. So just the basic stuff. But yeah, Northern Iowa is gonna be interesting because they're a top 25 FCS team. They're 2-0. They're coming off a come from behind win in Minnesota, St. Thomas More, I think. I don't know what they were called. Sorry about that. Yeah, St. Thomas in Minnesota. They're averaging a little under 300 rushing yards per game. So Northern Iowa is going to come in here and do what they do and see if Nebraska stops it. Now, obviously, I think Nebraska's going to stop it because this is just right up their alley with this is what the defense is good at, stopping the run. So, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tim. It's going to be interesting to see how this Nebraska team comes into this game after coming off a high against a hated rival. Winning good, having good vibes all around. But this is where Matt Rule comes in. He's a master talker. He knows how to get guys fired up, and he knows how to get guys to understand perspective and where they're at in this season. So this is where Matt Rule shines in games like this, where you come off from a great performance. Against a rival on a big stage with a lot of people watching, then you're going. I don't want to say you're going down to Northern Iowa, but you're playing an FCS team where maybe not a lot of people are going to be watching. How does the team still look? I think this is exactly where Matt Rule kind of makes his money.
For sure. And again, like for this next step for this team is like, can you handle business? Can you keep the same
Exactly.
energy throughout?
Hmm.
Because the really good teams in college football
Hmm.
keep the same energy no matter who they're playing. Georgia doesn't play down to their opponents. Alabama, well, they did it this last week, but Alabama doesn't play specifically under Saban didn't play
Yeah.
down against their opponents. Texas doesn't play down to their opponents. If Nebraska wants to get to the point where they want to get, you can't play down to your opponents. I'm curious to see how the run defense holds up. It's going to be the first real test for them. UTEP didn't really test Nebraska on the ground. Colorado obviously doesn't seem to show much willingness or need to run the ball,
Yep.
for better or worse. For worse. But
Hmm.
but we're going to get tested on Saturday. You got a big, it's a rushing attack that is averaging what, close to 300 per game at this
Yep.
point, and
Yeah.
they're
You want to
led
talk about
by
Ty Edwards now?
yeah, I was going to say they're led by a senior that's 6'4", 230 pounds. That's probably going to be one of the bigger backs Nebraska's going to see all season.
6'4", 230 pound Ty Edwards. He's a grad student from Florida, and he's had a long kind of winding college football path. He was a true freshman in 2019 at Georgia Military College. Rushed for 442 yards as a true freshman there. Then he spent the next 2 seasons at Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. Was an All-American over there. He spent 2022 at UTSA. He only played in 3 games there. Now he's at Northern Iowa. So he's had a winding road, but Ty Edwards, 6'4", 230 pounds. Look, he's big, he's physical, he can move. I mean, I'm going to enjoy watching this guy run the ball against Nebraska's defense and see how Nebraska's defenders react to a large human being running the ball. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to see him in person, excited to just size him
Yeah,
up in
me
person
too.
and just get a feel for what that looks like, running behind that offensive line against Nebraska's front.
Hmm.
Offensively with Nebraska, is there anything you're really looking for on Saturday? I don't really know. I just want to see clean, again, like you said, clean football from them.
Hmm.
Maybe get Dylan a little more comfortable, like trying to hit guys like Jalen Lloyd in stride and getting to spots a little faster. I think that was something that popped up a little bit on Saturday. Was like, okay, still a freshman, still taking a second to get through all of his progressions, but does a good job of reading through the field still. Better than most freshmen at the same time, but there's still like these freshman moments where it's like, okay, he held on to the ball a little long. He did have that third read open and then just couldn't get there fast enough. So want to see, a little improvement there. And I think at this point too with Nebraska, like game one, you didn't want to show too much. I think Nebraska gets back to a little more of vanilla on Saturday, but the playbook's been opened already a little bit. So it's like, what do you really like? You're not there. You can't hide forever. I think you see Nebraska try to connect on some things and put some things on film just to get guys comfortable catching passes from Dylan.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tim. I think it's gonna be pretty similar to the UTEP game. And I think, Nebraska's going to want to establish a run. And then once they do that, take their shots deep. And, that's what they did against UTEP. And I think that's what they're going to do against Northern Iowa, too. But like you said, just be more efficient with them. Have those plays where it might be just a little too far out for Jalen Lloyd to haul in, like it was against Colorado. Just ran it in a little bit. I think that's gonna be kind of key in this game is just being more efficient with those throws from Dylan, but then getting the run game going and just exerting your dominance and having the O line do its thing, and maybe use more Gabe Irvin, maybe use more Emmett Johnson if you know that Dante Dowdell is going to be your guy moving forward. Maybe try mixing in some more runs for all four of those guys too. Just spreading the love and getting those guys. It's a long season, so it's going to be good to keep everybody healthy. But yeah, I'm going to be interested in seeing the deep shots that Dylan takes, especially when that run game gets established.
For sure. Yeah, I think outside of that, just intrigued to see what happens on Saturday. Again, expecting Nebraska to kind of handle business. And next week we'll have a discussion going into Illinois and Big Ten play overall. And yeah, I think at some point down the line, once we get like 4 or 5 games in, I do want like just a overall we can connect and talk about just what we've seen from the team so far, overall general thoughts on what needs to improve. Once we get a real feel for this team and they've seen a couple of different looks offensively and defensively, I think we can have that
Mhm.
discussion about what this team is because I don't think we know everything about this team yet. We don't even know what this team is just yet and what their ceiling can be. And I don't think we're going to get that until a couple of weeks into Big Ten play.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And I wouldn't be shocked to see something new against Northern Iowa, but that's to maybe put it on film for Illinois to look at and study, and then maybe see a counter off of that when we actually play Illinois. So yeah, totally agree, Tim. It's going to be a fun one. Nebraska, 2-0 for the first time in a while. There's just a kind of a different feeling in here. I think everybody kind of knows that we're on to something maybe.
For sure, yeah, and but yeah, that'll do it for us. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check us out over at InsideNebraska.com for all our written content. We got more video content here as well. But that'll do it for us. We'll be back next week.